Welcome to another episode of Free Forward Friday with myself, Roche and my CEO.
How? When did I come? And then I become a CEO now. I thought you're the CEO.
Mr. Malesela and
Welcome, everyone.
So, another exciting episode. And it's the culture. If you see myself and the CEO on the same side, you must just know that the CEO has used his powers to invite a guest of the show.
Yes, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Chairman, for introducing me. Again, just to remind everyone, the whole reason we do this is so that we bring the stories of entrepreneurs, of professionals, of companies that have failed. Some that have failed forward, some that have failed, and I say organizations, in fact, even countries, as you would hear today. But it'll be an interesting conversation we have today with our speaker, a friend of the show, Mr. Gabuza himself.
Hey, nice to have me. Nice of you to have me.
All
protocol observed for the CEO. It's a great honor and privilege.
Mr. Gabuza, you must be careful. You might not be invited.
And they might not even air this episode. Get a cease and desist later. The CEO was not pleased with the quality of your work.
Of the introduction.
I'm gonna tread on eggshells just to make sure that.
How you been?
No, I've been great. And how have you been?
We've been amazing. Yeah. We're growing slowly but surely. But I know we're getting to the millions.
Amazing stories as well.
Yes.
Amazing lessons.
In fact, in the past few weeks, we've actually just had a lot of good friends of the shows. Because it's been a while since it's just been two of us, Doc. Yeah. But I guess it's the testament of how having someone else come onto the show, give us their perspective on another story is always quite good. But what are we talking about today?
Today, like you were saying, you talk about organizations, and so the organization I'm going to bring to you is Japan. So we know that I think, or maybe a lot of you might not know that there was a point where in the late 80s where everybody thought that Japan would be the world power, the number one economy. It basically, what you think of China today, Japan was that 40 years ago.
Yes.
And this scared a lot of people. And eventually it led to the Japan you know today, a successful country that hasn't quite lived up to the potential, like a Wayne Rooney of sorts, still a great player. It's still a great player.
Why are we being emotional?
And it's his own player. I don't know why.
I love Rooney.
No, a lot of people. I love him too. He's the reason why I'm a United fan today. Besides my dad, but everybody knows Wayne Rooney is undisputably a football legend. But there's always that thing of, hey, if he didn't drink, if he didn't do this, he didn't do that, he would have been, the same level as Messi and Ronaldo, as many people would. Many people often say that it was his habits that led to, a cap on his potential. So it's the same with Japan. A lot of people put it down to a specific event that happened in 1985, but we will go a few decades prior to that, just so that you can get an understanding of how we even got there in the first place. So, as we know, World War II was a world war that was fought between two powers, that namely, the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, comprised mainly of Germany, Italy, and Japan, yes. And then the Allies, the Soviet Union, and the other European countries, Britain, France, and then the US joining later on. So what happens is in 1945, we know that now the Allies were not so allied, and people started jockeying for position. We all know the Soviet Union was a big backer of the Communist Party. A lot of people don't know that the US had been actively supporting the KMT, and that's how they were able to fight off the Japanese for as long as they did. We're not going to get into that though. But eventually Japan, we know, is on the losing side. We know the nukes, we know that, but I think I'll rewind a little bit because I don't think Japan's economic success doesn't. The foundations are probably laid even before, the First World War, during a period called the Meiji Restoration, where an emperor named Emperor Meiji comes in and sees that Japan is behind. They've been isolated for about 200 years, save for very limited trading with the Dutch. And then they decide to open up to different ideas, which, funny enough, the population hated at the time. They say, why are we incorporating all of these Western ideas?
Just Japan in itself, I know, is a very strict bureaucratic nation in itself.
There's a general attitude amongst Asian societies that are very rigid, very collective based, as opposed to a lot of which is the antithesis. Big word there.
Yes.
The antithesis of most Western cultures, which emphasize individuality.
Yes.
So you'll find that they tend to operate in that. That's the one thread that goes closed off. Yes.
Or receptive to
Yes.
other cultures coming through. Yeah.
So then part of this is they basically, this restoration period aims to catch up with the Western powers at the time. So to catch up with the US, Britain, and all of them by incorporating ideas that they saw work, like the Industrial Revolution. They industrialized. They introduced more Western ideas into their education, and this was a resounding success, because then through that we get Imperial Japan, Japan becomes a colonial power that goes and conquers most of the Asian region. A lot of people don't know that either. That Japan was actually one of the big colonizers.
Is this the reason why China and Japan they have this?
Yeah, it's why most of the region, Korea and Japan, you would think would be closer allies, but they're not because of that unfortunate history, and they were quite brutal as well, in the conquest, in the conquering. So then World War II happens. Obviously that gets to
that big heads, basically.
Yeah, that big heads. Yeah, they thought, hey, we can go and do, and part of that, another part, we all know. I'm sure you've heard of the term Bushido, the warrior code, and all of these things, all of these ideals inform the reason why they are so aggressive in how they fight, and the Western powers thought they couldn't defeat Japan unless they made it abundantly clear that they would be willing to go even further than the Japanese were, which was quite fun. That's why they nuked. That's why they nuked and firebombed. They nuked, obviously, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but a lot of people don't know they also went to carpet bombing campaigns in Tokyo as well. So then that forces Japan's hand. But what the US did to Japan's benefit was that, in fear of Japan turning into a China, i.e., a communist influence, they pump a lot of money into the Japanese economy to help them rebuild.
And access into the US as well.
And access into US markets. And by extension, because the US was the big boss at the time, most of Europe's markets as well. And a few innovators. I know, Mali, you're a tech guy. Like the transistor, funny enough, we get to a point in the 50s where the transistor is basically like a big piece of technology that Japan sees a future in, so they replicate this. And so for the audience, a lot of people don't know that Japan's success was not necessarily innovation in hardware, but it's more so their processes were so much better, which is why I gave you the initial background, because they perfected these things over decades. They were able to take an idea from AT&T, the transistor, for radios. That's radio equipment. So the radios as we know them today, they use that bit of technology. I'm a lawyer, so I don't know that in detail. Our CEO here could probably tell you what a transistor is better than I could.
Please, we are begging.
Anyway, and
we all know the digital camera, funny enough, was an American invention as well that Japan took and perfected through their processes. The same with cars, the same with everything. So the economy Kaizen is one of those processes, principles of continuous, which itself was actually another US process. A lot of professors had been trying to implement those ideas, but corporates in the US weren't interested. But the Japanese saw it. they adapted it for their own culture, and then it turned into that process. You get Toyotas and all of these things, and the economy booms again. In fact, by the 60s, I mean, they were already back to where they were. They were back into a position of strength.
Yeah.
They had a trade surplus by then.
Yes.
And then the economy grows to the point where, they are hot on the heels of the
America,
US.
yeah.
So now...
Fastest growing economy at the time.
Absolutely. And they get to... And in fact, by the time we get to the 80s, there's a point in time where Japan actually has a higher GDP per capita than the US. And this sparks fears, and it wasn't, and to just to give you context, audience, is that Japan wasn't also an issue wasn't the only issue at this point. West Germany was also experiencing a huge boom as well, to the point where, sorry, Doc, you
No, I wanted to say, interesting that West Germany was also an ally of the US. If you look at the East and the West, West Germany was more, to say, not necessarily occupied, but they had a very close relationship with the US, unlike East Germany, because East Germany fell under the USSR, and that's where the
partition,
the Berlin Wall is. So this side of the world, that's where. So it looks like it was a US strategy.
Yeah, it was. Because in Japan, to your point, Doc, they moved very quickly to change the constitution, to weaken the powers of the emperor, to weaken the powers of old Japanese corporations they were known as zaibatsu, to then make it easier for ordinary Japanese citizens to move up the ladder and so on and so forth. So it definitely was a strategic point to have allies in all parts of the world.
So it's
Right.
as if now that the US can see these guys are rising, it's like an unintended consequence.
Yes,
And
both of them. Funny enough, both of their defeated foes that they strongly backed rose quicker than they expected.
We like to see you succeed, but not as close.
It's like that friend you help out from the crowd, but now you see him doing better than you. Like, I don't know anymore. Exactly. So we get to the 80s, and it's gonna sound familiar because it's more or less the same thing that the US is doing now. And funny enough, another Republican president who was old, who people didn't think was going to be that great of a leader, Ronald Reagan. The Reagan administration comes in the early 80s and tries to curb this. Most people focus on Japan, but those tariffs that they implemented were also implemented on German products as well, because they were thinking.
This is the G5 at the time that did that.
We're not there yet. It was just
okay.
the US on their own now. Because
okay.
remember, the US was the number one market. In fact, if you look back in history, maybe the last 50 years, most countries became rich by targeting the US as a consumer market. China did it, Korea just before that, Japan before that. So they all sort of copied each other's homework, and so that if I can sell things for the US to think I can sell them anywhere else.
Because the US is the marketing capital of the world.
And the consumerism capital
it's so easy for them,
So
So
then
it's a capitalist system that's built on consumers.
And they also, we know that the U.S. Navy secures shipping routes around the world and so on and so forth. But now they're seeing that they're being left behind now, because with increasing corporatization, they do not have as strong as an emphasis on, perfecting their manufacturing techniques. The big three, for example, were comfortable in the fact that I can just, I have the government's protection. I can sell whatever I want to locals, and then it's in their interest to protect my interest because they need to keep these jobs. But now all of these products coming from Japan to a greater extent, and to a lesser extent Germany, were knocking American competition out of the water. And so they tried to introduce tariffs. I think there was a 45% tariff on cars, tariffs on electronics and so on, but this doesn't work because people still buy these products. And if they get to a point where they think, if we carry on, if we let these people keep doing what they're doing, it's gonna. So then we get to that point where the G5 comes together. It's known as the Plaza Accord because it was at the Plaza Hotel in New York, where they basically either ask nicely, probably strong armed.
Strong armed.
Yeah, they strong armed. They said, "Hey, Japan, you want to keep selling things here?" and the other Western countries who now probably recovered, who had somewhat recovered from World War II. So the G5, as Mali was saying, they come together and they basically strong arm Japan into strengthening their yen, because the yen was a lot weaker than the other currencies, which is good for an exporter, because that means, for economic reasons,
it becomes cheaper.
Yeah, it's cheaper for you to import. So they needed to strengthen the yen so that other countries can then import stuff into Japan. And so Japan agreed to this because, one, they know where their bread is buttered.
Yes.
You need to know where your bread is buttered. But now Japan, the problem is that Japan had not, as you were saying, Mali, that Japan is very conservative.
Yes.
And their markets were conservative. They weren't quite prepared to have markets that were open to speculation in the same way that all other markets are open. And so what happens is that initially it works in Japan in not necessarily businesses' favor. It works in Japanese individuals' favor because now the yen is stronger. They can and people can skirt around like inheritance taxes and laws and stuff. So they have a lot of money to spend, and Japanese people spend, and there's a bubble, that causes that causes speculation to rise and rise and rise.
Interest rates as well at the time was like ridiculous. They were the
they had
lowest
lowest,
in the world.
So then they actually, what happened to your point about interest rates, they actually cut them as well, which made lending a lot easier, for Japanese citizens, and they didn't have the controls, without the controls that would normally come, meaning that I could walk in without the means to pay for it because the money supply is abundant.
It's free money, as they would say.
And Japanese people spend, they spend more than anybody else. In fact, they start buying up properties, because of the speculation and the openness to foreign investment.
You're saying that when I was doing the research on my end as well, I saw that they say 60% of Japanese all had homes, like 60% of them. And then people in their 20s and 30s had 3 houses. I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's quite interesting. I mean, when you listen to that and you contrast that with what's happening in China. Because China, it's also...
Because they learned from Japan's mistakes, So they're very...
I mean, they're making still mistakes because there's a whole apartment blocks and cities that are empty.
And funny enough, property speculation happened there as well, and that it takes about 14 times the yearly salary to be able to afford a home. So most people can't really buy homes.
Yes.
That's why there was that massive housing market crash in
2008.
in China now, like recently, in China, like 2022, 2023.
I was actually going to say is everything that happened in Japan happened in 2007-8. The housing market that happened to now China as well. It's like, guys, can you not learn?
One of the things, and I mean, maybe we'll get to it. One of the things that I'm asking myself is when you look at China and this whole thing that the Chinese economy at some point will grow and supersede the US economy. And I think at the back of my mind, I think China knows that should that happen, pretty much to what happened to Japan. The US will want to find a way of sabotaging that, right? And I mean, this whole speculation that by 2030 or by 20 whatever, the Chinese economy will be the biggest economy in the world. I have a sneaking suspicion that China doesn't want that. China, even if the economy was
I was actually, on my way here, I was actually thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It's why I think they're so restrictive in their stock markets and investing in China, because they know that
has a very strong
they want to prevent any sort of spike or market conditions that will take power out of their hands. So they would rather stay lower and keep control than let the purse strings out.
But to be honest as well, I think the whole housing market was a good wake-up call before the big thing happened. Because the fact that this housing market in China actually fell so much, I think they learned there. because then the government honed in on all of those companies,
yeah.
and they needed to, you know. But maybe going back to what we're saying now around the speculations and everything else, because funny, I was looking at a video earlier on how China might also become the next Japan. Because
they're already actually suffering from the same problems.
Yeah.
For they came to the same place in different sort of
exactly
ways.
exactly. Because one of the things that I was checking is that at a stage Japan had 75% of US bonds. It's exactly what
China has most of of global US debt.
Exactly.
They have a similar working culture.
Yeah.
They have a similar birth rate problem.
It is like copy paste.
Yeah.
Copy paste.
Cultural background.
Cultural, exactly.
Because funny enough, China for centuries was the biggest economy in the world. They influenced the region. So with like Confucianism and so on and so forth. So it's not a surprise that they're all experiencing the same problem because it's like a circular wheel of influence.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. So then what happened was that Japanese real estate was super expensive, as in the collective value of Japanese real estate was more than US real estate, despite it being such a small. In fact, there was the time where the Tokyo Palace was worth more than the entire California's entire property real estate value. So people thought that and also Japanese companies were the hot thing. I think 8 out of the 10 biggest companies in the world at that point were Japanese, and I think 60%
out of the 10 banks were the biggest banks in the world.
Imagine that. And 60% of the biggest companies in the world were Japanese. Sorry, that's what it was. Yeah, and so everybody thought that the good times would carry on, and they never. And as in the story of human nature, they never do.
just last one of the fun fact. They had hey Marianne, when you have money just makes people go, I don't know, I don't want to say dumb, but money,
new money, especially new money,
if it comes quickly,
it gives you itchy hands.
It does. They had this whole thing where they started trading golf. Yes, that whole golf club thing. So for me to have access to a golf club, I would trade that, and that whole market for golf memberships. Golf club memberships was so big that it was bigger than the economy of. He said, what was it? The economy of something. Like, it was so crazy. Like in the country's economy.
And they were acquiring a bunch of they acquired film studios.
Yes, I mean in America as well.
They acquired property. Yes. They acquired a bunch of things.
Yeah,
and
the
so,
Rockefeller,
the Rockefeller Center. It was bought by Japanese, and Japanese investors. So Japan was and then the bubble burst in 1990 when people, funny enough, influenced by people's fears. But I think the writing was on the wall like probably 3 years earlier, because you would have seen. And the Japanese government should have seen this, that what was happening in the New York stock market in 1987 because of inflated corporate. There was that corporate raider. In a previous episode I was here, we spoke about corporate raiders. So that sort of came to its crescendo, and people saw that this was unsustainable. The market crashes in 1987. And a similar thing happens. People see that 1990 in Japan, and this is where we can stop blaming the US, I think, because what the Japanese government did, and owing to that culture of conservatism, they never really at all material times when they had an opportunity to stem the tide, because every country has been through crashes. There've been multiple crashes that the US has covered. Even Iceland, for a lot of people who don't know, audience, they were some of the worst hit. They were arguably the worst hit country by the 2008 stock exchange. But now people praise Iceland because of their banking system was geared in a certain way, that they were affected more than most European countries, and then they were able to recover. But what the Japanese government did is that they never, when you have an arm that has, is it gangrene? like sort of your arm is infected. You have to amputate it.
Yeah.
So what Japan did is that they didn't do that. They had a bunch of these. Remember we spoke about loans earlier to the audience. They never got rid of those bad loans. They never wrote them off. They just kept on propping up institutions that were failing. As you would have seen in 2008 that companies like Lehman Brothers were allowed to fail. Certain institutions were allowed to fail.
Yeah.
This didn't happen in Japan because the very thing that made them successful, and the close relationship that many companies, the government, and the thing that made them successful in the first place, that the strong, they call it the iron triangle, banks, companies, and the Japanese government.
One that you were talking about earlier on, is it?
Which one?
Where the whole the economy was like so tightly knit, where they did business with each other. They did
because the state effectively to get to that place, the state effectively granted sort of these grants. They call it window something. I forgot the term now. Where the government will then publish in like a magazine or something like that. Obviously they've told the companies, but they'll let the public know as well that we are planning to invest this much in we will give this much credits in like a form of a credit or support to this industry, and then they will fund that, similar to what China's doing now with SOEs and so on, and Korea did it a bit later, so they're all copying each other's homework again, and that led to us because there was a strong partnership between public and private enterprises. They were able to. There were even like regulations that forced, just like in China, to some extent, to force participation amongst companies that would ordinarily be rivals. So if there were technological innovations, if there were process innovations, there would have to be some sort of collaboration, and that meant they were successful in ways that most Western countries just weren't at that point in time.
I mean, it's quite interesting that, I was looking at an index showing the most successful car in the world by sales, right? And they were showing all this Ford and Model T. It started with Model T.
Then it became the Beetle.
And it became the Beetle.
Before that, I think it was the Citroen 2CV.
Yes, and they showed all of those. And at the top, like by a high margin, is the Toyota Corolla.
I was about to say it's a Corolla.
It was a Corolla.
Everybody uses Corolla.
Yeah, Corolla. All over the world,
And it shows the strength of how the Japanese manufacturing process was.
Think about how Fujifilm and thingy, and Sony basically put everybody else out of the market in those same industries.
Where is Japan now?
And so Japan.
I think there was the president was assassinated recently.
He had already been. He was out of office at that point. Shinzo Abe, Shinzo Abe. So I'll summarize what happened.
No problem.
The rest of what happened was that they called them initially. They'd called the 90s the lost decade because of these half measures and no measures. Japan just stayed in this. Basically, stayed limbo.
Were they paralyzed by?
They were paralyzed by the government's decision. So let's say, for example, to use an actual example, what they did was they would try and encourage stimulus, but then raise consumption taxes. And there's that cycle of they'll try and save, they'll try and pump money into the economy, but not cut off banks and businesses that aren't performing, or they'll raise interest rates at the wrong time, things like that. So 3 decades worth of policy missed. That meant that Japan is actually in the exact same place that they were in the 80s.
If not more, because inflation has passed.
In fact, with them it was deflation, because people were afraid to spend now because they're thinking that if I spend, I go into debt. If I go into debt, it's going to thingy. So while unemployment rates dropped, it meant
And on the other hand, they're obviously having an aging
population, a lack of innovation as well, because their structures, their company structures are old.
Yes.
They're the same as they've been.
I saw a way they said that as much as technologically they were probably the best at a stage.
They never innovated.
They never innovated, and and one of the issues that they say, like for instance, they didn't take on computer literacy
and software was not
as a main thing to drive the economy. The problem was that they needed to translate the key, what software is into Japanese language, and Japanese language has thousands of characters, which is a problem now, and that kind of like set them back as well.
So it's kind of like there was this whole thing about them also being risk averse.
Yes.
Driven also by their cultural, because they have like this very affinity to their culture. And one of the thing is, and I've read about it, I can't remember where because of their fear of failure, they look at failure, unlike with the US.
Yeah.
Who embrace failure.
So they were very risk averse.
Yeah.
And and also we spoke about it earlier on that they are sort of like a family orientated community. If you fail at something, you were deemed to have brought the shame to the family, and it was a big thing. And the only way you could redeem yourself, if you had done that, is commit suicide, so that you can redeem the family name. I mean,
that's
really
intense.
It is.
Listen, I could have died long time ago.
Got all those mistakes, dog.
All my blunders. I wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't have this channel. We wouldn't have this spot. We are thankful, dog.
Probably that's why they are in a limbo.
That's the thing. The thing is, it's sorry, I just want to say something. The thing about having a fear mentality is that a fear mentality does nothing. Because it has to preserve itself, right? And the same with, it's like almost having a cold war of these two people knowing that the one can't go against the other and the other one can't go against the other, so we'd rather not do anything.
It's a standoff.
It's a standoff, exactly. Now you're in the standoff with death, basically. And if you're in the standoff with death, preservative is what you need to do. But that kills you as well.
It does.
Slowly, but it eventually does kill you.
And that's what's happening with Japan. I mean, you still have old reporting structures. People, because of the fear of failure, people aren't going to put new ideas forward. Because of the influence, the outsized influence that a few corporations. Remember, it was great for them when they grew, when they had a few corporations that the government could work closely with. But now those corporations are greedy. It's a similar thing that's happening in Korea, where because of the chokehold that all of these Mitsubishis and Sonys and Samsungs and in Korea now and Hyundais have over like the markets, it becomes difficult to innovate because they'll steal your ideas, they'll undercut suppliers, they'll basically abuse their power because they know that the government and people aren't going to do anything about it. And that's a growth killer.
Doc, maybe here's a question. Here's an interesting question. And it's actually, this is actually bizarre. So Professor Christensen comes up with the jobs to be done theory. And what's the one that goes with the jobs to be done? There's jobs to be done and...
Okay.
But the one that basically where China and all these guys, like Japan first did it, where they brought a cheaper car that is quality into the US market and it killed off all the other Fords and everything else. They didn't kill them off, but it actually took their market, that lower class market, so Ford had to move out. And the same thing, and that for them was the innovative side, right? Okay, they were innovative, whatever. Korea did the same thing. Came in at a lower place, brought out, pushed the guys up. The same thing with China now, doing in the same thing, pushing them up. Now, my question is more around, I wonder, obviously somewhere, somehow, these are all, as you'd say, they copy each other's homework. I wonder how that plays into this whole thing of, obviously, okay, Korea is not falling apart.
Well, they're thinking
as we know it.
No, a lot is they also, it's at an accelerated rate because remember they became prosperous sooner, so they have all of the same problems. The lack, trying to compensate for a lack of productivity with longer hours, So you can't. So that lowers the birth rate. How do you have children when you can't even? You don't have time to sit and
look
think.
after them, yeah.
A competitive learning environment, which was good when you're growing, but now when you've grown, you can't. People won't want to bring children in a world where
it's just
you're,
rough,
where
it's
you're
just-
where you're
yeah.
spending 15 hours studying, to try and get into a university, because you know that I can't start a company, I can't do this, I have to go to this organization, and a lot of people are competing for the same places.
So that's actually the cost that it took. For,
You become a victim of your own success.
They all are.
Yeah, and I think China also, because there's also concerns that
Yes.
there's so many billionaires
Yes.
now, or millionaires in China, as a result.
And there's
of-
been a crackdown on wealthier.
On wealth,
yeah.
wealthier.
because you have taken so many. I mean, China is probably the only country in the world that has taken about 50 million of their people out of extreme poverty.
Yeah.
Right. To the
Yeah.
middle class. So what then happens is you have these people who can now afford
Yeah.
to buy the very same things that they're manufacturing, right? And in the process,
Which is what America did, though.
yeah. So in the process, you then have all these guys who are doing very well.
Yeah.
But now the challenge therefore is, it's this Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
So as they go
Yes.
up the hierarchy,
Yes.
obviously they want better things,
Yes.
right? Then the standard of living goes up, and then they also want to be paid better.
Yes.
Because the whole China system, how they managed to manufacture all these things cheaper, is because they had a very cheap
Labor
cost,
Yeah.
right? And other countries could not compete with
Yeah.
that. We can't compete with that labor
Yes.
cost, right? But now they're at a stage where the labor cost, which
It's more
used to be an
expensive still, yeah.
advantage back then, it's becoming increasingly less advantageous,
Yes.
because now these people, because their standard of living is increasing. they
But that's
also-
why for them now technology is a thing, because they need
True,
But they
sorry, just to get it. What they're also doing is they're now looking outside of China.
Yeah. Oh, they've been looking outside of China.
for cheaper
Yes.
labor, and I think Lesotho, for instance,
Yes.
Bangladesh,
for
yes.
instance.
Vietnam has been a huge
Yeah.
beneficiary of
Yeah.
that, and I think to a less, and then I think Indonesia as well. I'm not
Yes,
sure about
yes.
Indonesia.
But the thing is now, and that's obviously other companies outside of China. The Chinese are still doing China, for instance.
No. Chinese companies
Yes.
are looking to
Yeah.
offshore. Yeah. Because if you're manufacturing this thing here and the labor cost here is expensive, they want to try and find other.
So here's the thing about that, right, Doc? And it's something that for me is I saw it was a Bloomberg one of these short documentaries on YouTube, and they were talking about how made in China, if in this day and age, shouldn't be a big thing. In fact, economies must actually, or are actually supposed to be able to do things to a certain extent locally. With machinery and the advance of machinery, you don't need a human being to do certain things that what China used to do. Now, the same machine that makes a phone, you can just buy it inside of your country and you can easily get that. Now, you're actually competing against power, who has the cheaper power instead of, so the resource now is power, not people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we are there.
Yeah.
No,
I
we're
would
not
say I
there
don't think
yet.
we're there yet.
What I'm trying to
Yeah,
get to is...
yes. Theoretically, we need to.
If you need to
it
look at it,
works.
you need to frame it that way.
Yes.
Basically, that we
Yes.
need to stop looking at human capital,
Yes.
maybe see how we can
Yeah.
Well,
skip that
let's be
process
honest,
and get to.
It's already being done.
Yeah, but not at mass.
No, not en masse, but it's already being done. And the problem is you don't want
true.
to catch yourself already good. I'll give you an example. If the first person that gets, it's the same with this AI run. The first person that gets the worm, the second person that comes to get the worm won't be as successful as the first person. And that's exactly, if you think of it, what China did. Because India could have done exactly what China did. They had the population as well. In fact, they were actually growing exponentially more. But they just couldn't do it the same as China.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the discussion about the work ethic, right? I mean, if you look at India's work ethic compared to the Chinese work ethic, Chinese work ethic is unparalleled.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, one of the arguments that's coming out now with this whole Obama trying to onshore the jobs back from China. No, not Obama. Trump. Trying to onshore all the jobs from China.
No, but I think it's a bipartisan thing because the Biden administration did similar things in that regard.
So, and the question is, I mean, can the American workers outperform the Chinese workers, right?
Yeah, fair.
They can't, right?
But
I'm coming to the machine part.
Yeah.
And the question therefore is, work ethic wise, if you were to say Apple must bring back the jobs to the US, you must be prepared to pay twice as much for an iPhone because the cost of labor, not only is it expensive, but it's also inefficient.
Yes.
Right? So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know. Now, if we bring then the 4IR into the equation, right, and we talk about the fact that factories of the future will be mainly robots and not necessarily humans, for instance.
Yeah.
Those robots still need to be manufactured somehow.
Yeah.
And we also know that, you know, in this day and age, the best manufacturer still is China.
So here's my thing about that, Doc. And
so you look at, for instance, EV cars.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
EV cars globally.
Yeah.
China is the most the other ones.
The most,
they outperform the US in terms of EV manufacturing. Right? So talk about then manufacturing all these robots and whatever. My sense is it still be China leading.
No, so I get that. You know what I'm saying now is the problem is even if here's the thing. So the people that are innovating these robots, who are they? It's probably the Americans. The Americans, the Germans, a metropolitan, as we'd say, right? It's somewhere where it's a metropolitan. And for them, what the next best thing to do is build up these, I think of the chip manufacturing, that the actual machine that makes the chip doesn't come from China. It comes from
Taiwan.
Germany. Well, not even Taiwan is the one but the guys that manufacture the actual fab.
They're actually made in Germany and Liechtenstein, right?
Yes.
I think,
And
Luxembourg, one of those smaller countries as well,
So those guys are the ones that made this machine, meaning they don't need China to make something that can produce something that is so important. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm getting to. It's not to say that China can't lead and can't manufacture, but if China doesn't innovate as fast as the other guys, they're going to find themselves where everyone will ship to America because, look, we don't need, this thing runs 24/7.
Look, and I think that's where the debate goes to say, with the 4IR coming through, what is the future of jobs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know and there's also this discussion that there will be new jobs coming.
There won't be that many.
I think that those are corporates trying to sell you an idea. We all know, man. It's not the same. It won't be the same.
So
it won't be like Japan. Yeah.
So I think the question therefore is, if that's the case, where we are then saying that a typical factory of the future will have less than 20% traditional workforce.
Yes.
The question is, what's going to happen to the 80%?
Yes.
What's going to happen to the Chinese workforce? For instance, right? I can't answer that now.
Yeah.
Right. It will be interesting to sort of get to see how China is preparing for it, because they've built the economy based on labor force, right?
That's what they're trying to. It's exactly what you said. We spoke about it in the last 2 episodes back or whatever, or somewhere, where we said if you all manufacture, or if everything is created inside of something, but that something doesn't go out, meaning exports, you're exporting. What's happening is money's generally gonna migrate to one person or a few people, and then the rest won't have. And that's what China, I guess, is doing so cleverly. Is that they it's like Nigeria of Africa, in Africa. Go to any country probably in the world. There's a Chinese person, there's a Nigerian, because they needed to go outside of the economy to bring back into the economy. Because if obviously they're sending money back. They're empowering other people, people in the rurals back there. And I think that's what they're doing differently from what Japan did. Because Japan, yes, they had experts, but their experts was more, guys, go and teach people how to do it. But in this sense, China's just saying, yo, go live.
But China also made the same mistake as well.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Before, when they built the Chinese wall,
Yes.
and they isolated themselves from the
And
of that
some
century of
political
civilization.
analysts are suggesting they moving in that trend again of obviously more protectionism, trying to wall off as well to prevent. Because remember, at the end of the day, the CCP wants to answer to only the CCP.
Yeah.
And they might deem in their interest, and that's what it's being argued, is that there's a point where the CCP themselves might be their own, they might shoot themselves in the foot to keep themselves in power.
Yeah.
Because if we get to a certain, like we were saying, if we get to a certain threshold, we won't have control over, processes, the way the country works, and they espouse control over everything else. So that might be an issue as well. And that's a topic for another day.
I know this topic can go.
So
whatever.
what's the
Complex,
lesson?
yeah. I think for me, it's that there's the obvious pressure from outside powers, but I think sometimes your
Downfall.
your downfall, the same thing that can build you up is what, have you heard of the Dutch disease? Basically, oil, or it came, I don't know if it was Holland itself, but basically it's how like oil can actually hold a country back because they become so dependent on it. They call it the Dutch
resource
disease.
curse.
That's good.
Yeah, a resource curse.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's
so
the
it
same
sounds like
thing,
the Icarus deception. The
Yes.
Icarus
They
story.
flew too close to the sun.
Yeah. It's like they flew close to the sun,
Yeah.
but I think also for me when I'm listening to this is also the fact that they suffered analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Like they got close, then they could not move.
Yeah.
And I think Japan even now, it's still at that stage
the same
where
thing, yeah.
they're floating somewhere.
I mean, Doc, to your point, average wages are the same as they were back then.
Can you?
After all those ups and
But
downs,
also
they're back to where
they tried
back
to
to where
curb.
started
I know they
and
tried to
stuff,
curb inflation a lot. That's why.
yeah,
they
and
still
that's
at
why
where
they're in
they
that
are.
deflationary
Yes, now
cycle
they're in
where
the
prices
deflation.
drop, and so it's just the same, and they can't do all they've done. You find people economists find it funny because all of these all of this innovative these new monetary were coined by Japan trying to stop disaster, like quantitative easing was a Japanese invention to try and do something.
Yes.
So all of these new ideas, but and everybody else benefited from these same ideas,
Well, you learn from
except
other
for
people's
Japan.
mistakes.
Except for Japan.
You learn from other people's mistakes.
I was also going to say that they are now focused on that, on austerity, and from a country that was number 2
Yeah.
in the world.
In the world, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, it's not. But to be fair, you'd rather go from number 2 to number 4. I mean, then go
Then from 100 to
My
to zero.
concern though is with an aging population they have, they might not even be at number
my thing,
4.
dogs. I'll be honest. Now, the aging thing for me, and especially maybe the Asians. Yeah, maybe the Asians are a bit tough, but I don't think it should be such a big problem because, as open as the world is, you don't need people internally to actually have a successful country.
Yeah,
America
but you need
proving.
an active population.
So
Yeah,
what
you
I,
do.
but what I mean
'Cause
is
what-
they could
what-
easily build that active population without worrying at the fact, because we point out the fact that people are aging population, which is for a population like China, 100%, because they're a billion. When you take out 500
But
million
Japan is
out of
also a pretty
billion,
big, and what saved countries like Germany, France, the US is because they just brought in immigrants.
But
to-
that's not
to
exactly
deal
what
with the
I'm trying to
deficit.
get to, right? Is that, and that's exactly what actually is happening in Japan.
Is
They
it?
actually, funny enough, I actually saw it last week. They've opened up Japan. It was something on.
Yeah, there's certain permits now
Yes,
that
now
they're
just letting
allowing
people
it.
in
Yeah.
because they need to curb the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's my point.
Yeah.
Looking at your China, Japan, and all those things, Asian countries are very closed.
Very homogeneous.
They are very homogeneous. They don't want to lose their authenticity of what makes them, who they are. And opening up the country just like that. It's as a result of the fact that
Yeah.
they can see that internally
100%.
they're getting weaker and weaker.
It's a visa that they're allowed. It's now to get a visa is like working visa, studying visa. It's very easy.
Even for blue collar workers,
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
It's very easy for Japan because they need them. Now you can't if you don't have. It's like Botswana. Botswana has 2 million people, 3 million people. They're suffering now because you know what I mean. It's just 2 people.
Yeah, no. I mean, Botswana. I mean, if you
Namibia
contrast,
to a certain extent.
Namibia. So if you contrast what Botswana, Namibia, and even Japan, and you compare it to what the UAE is,
Yes.
UAE, yeah.
Yes, they
what
just letting people in.
They just
Yeah.
you want to come work.
Zonke bonke.
But they obviously managed to keep their authenticity. Fridays is religious day. And,
Yeah.
Right?
It's still they
hosting
still
the World
yeah.
Cup. There's
I
no
think-
beers in the stadium.
Yeah.
You know, but
I think
but
it's
they
that
open
balance.
themselves.
Sorry to cut you off, Doc. To your point, I think it's striking that balance. You have to have strong institutions and a strong sense of imposing your culture on anybody who comes in. That when you come in, you adhere by these rules, or else, and you don't. You have to be slightly draconian with how you deal with people who don't adhere to those rules.
So if you look at, for instance, your I mean, if your population is 12 million, 10
and 90%, is expats.
Right? Would Japan be happy with that, for instance?
There's already been cultural
to be honest,
bite back in Japan,
Yeah.
and there's been a rise of far right parties
Yes.
in the form of.
I mean, in the world where you
Trumpian
have the
stuff,
Brexit, you have pushback on this thing. It's gonna be very interesting to see.
No,
All right, is that the pot?
that's the part. We can stay forever, but there's many things to say. Maybe we should have a part 2 actually.
That's not because I think for me the part 2 should then talk about the whole thing of running a closed economy versus running an open economy.
Let's actually do that.
And what the perils are and what the
'cause-
advantages are.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let's do that. Let's do that. In fact, there's it's actually going to be interesting because there's companies that also have a closed system thing. That will be interesting.
In terms of innovation as well.
Innovation and I mean hedge funds that only do for themselves. It'll be interesting.
Take us home.
Thank you, Mr. Gabuza.
No, thank you for having me.
Maybe
sir.
next time you should come as well. Might as well. Or is it-
I don't know. He's coming.
CEO, I mean, chairman, I invite him.
By the powers vested in me by the CEO, you are invited.
I'm so grateful.
Okay. Thank you very much,
You had a
everyone.
very bumpy start. At least you're finishing
I'm so
strong.
glad.
For a moment, I was thinking, the CEO is not impressed.
I'm gonna be embargoed. I'm so glad the CEO is pleased.
Okay, thank you very much everyone for tuning in to another installment of Faithful Friday. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. So, yes, one of our episodes had like quite a lot of comments. It was quite interesting. But yes, share with your friends, family, fools, whoever you want to share with, so that we can learn to fail forward.
Awesome.
Thank you.